abandonment issues that I dealt with because being a military brat, when you were friends with somebody, they move or you move, and so you didn't want to get close to anybody. And then, we moved in with my grandma that was more mentally abusive, and then we ended up moving up to Festus, which is Jefferson County, and my mom remarried, and I thought it was a safe place. I still had an issue trying to meet to get good friends because I still had the abandonment. I just couldn't get past that. Well, I was sexually molested, so that sent me into a farther tailspin. And my way of dealing with that was I lashed out. I fought. I terrorized the neighborhood. Even though I was nice to everybody because I wanted their approval. I wanted to be accepted because I was battling on the inside, and I was just dealing with hurt and anger and shame. So I was looking for other people for love, for acceptance, and a lot of times I didn't get it, so I lashed out. When I was 17, I was in a bad accident, and that's really when I got a taste of pain meds, and that's where my addiction really took off. Back then the doctors handed out pain medicine like it was candy. Now I'm going to back up a little bit. I knew when I was in school, I'd always eat the same foods or listen to the same music, and people gave me, I caught slack for it. But I had to have the same pizza every day for school. I had to listen to the same songs, and so I'd had that addictive personality. So when I started taking the pain meds, my whole mindset changed. I felt I was more open, I guess. I was more, I love myself more, so I thought. I was just in a better place. In all reality, I wasn't. And then I got married and we got divorced, and that's when the harder stuff hit. And that was in 92, and that's when things really, really took off bad. Things started to get a blur. I couldn't function unless I had alcohol in my system. I couldn't function unless I had drugs in my system. It was nonstop partying, and at one point my dad got divorced for the fifth time, and he moved back to Missouri, and I had an extra room in my trailer, and I asked him. He wanted to move in, and I just wanted a relationship with my dad back. I mean, who doesn't? So I had to move in, and I told him, you can't drink. But the problem was, I was telling an alcoholic he can't drink, but I was having keg parties in the other room. Non-stop partying, and I'm expecting him to sit in his room and not have a drink. That's like putting me in the middle of a dope house and telling me to sit on my hands and putting dope in front of me. I found out that he was drinking. I kicked him out. Not long after that, we were at a funeral. He tried to make it better, and I wasn't ready because my mindset was going back to the physical abuse and the mental abuse. My mindset wasn't to where the situation I put him in. And we always think that we have more time. We always think that there's going to be tomorrow. We could do it tomorrow. We could do it next week. Well, a week later, he went to bed and never woke up. So the last conversation I had with my dad was out of hate. And he's buried at Jefferson Barracks, and it took me a long time to be able to go up and to see him. So that sent me into a farther tailspin. I ended up losing my job. I worked for Shop and Save in Kirkwood, made a lot of money, worked a lot of hours, and I lost it for drugs. I got put on paper, and you would have thought that would have been my bottom. You would have thought that would have been my downfall. But no, I just kept digging deeper, and I was in and out of relationships. And if a girl were to show me any attention, I was like a leech. And I to the point where I pushed them away, and then I cried like a little baby when they left, because I thought they loved me. I didn't love myself, but I didn't understand any of that until I got into recovery. I just wanted somebody to accept me for who I was. I wanted somebody to love me, but I didn't love myself. I was still angry inside. I was still hurting inside. And the drugs and the alcohol was what I used to numb the pain. And I could forget about that, and I could, I was more outgoing per se. So I was in and out of relationships, and divorced a few times. And 2013, I guess, the job I was at, it was closing. I knew it was closing. I was telling everybody, yeah, I'm looking for another job, but I was more worried about getting high, getting drunk. And I lived with my fiance. She was beautiful, and she had 2 beautiful kids, beautiful house. And she ended up kicking me out. She didn't know I was an addict, but I ended up pawning everything. And I put the drugs in front of her, and I put the drugs in front of her kids. So then I moved in with my mom, and I was living in my mommy's basement. How cool is that, being 45, living in mommy's basement with no job, no car? But again, the drugs were more important to me than anything else. That's where my mindset was. I couldn't function unless I had dope in my system. And at this point, when I first started using, the pleasure was there, but now it was just misery. Now it was just survival mode. I couldn't get out of bed unless I was high, and if I didn't have any dope, who could I screw over to get it? And I started pawning from my mom, took cash. She caught on to me. I took her debit card one night, and I came home, and she said, why'd you do it? And I said, do what? She knew I knew, and I mean, she knew. I ended up taking $400 off her debit card, and she told me to get the hell out of her house. So I get out of her house, and 3 days later, my sister called me, and my mom has a brainstem stroke and never recovers. So the last conversations I had with my parents were out of hate because of where my addiction took me. If I could take those 2 conversations back, I would in a heartbeat. And you would think that would be my bottom. Of course not. I kept digging and digging and digging and digging. I kept pawning. I kept screwing people over. I kept doing whatever I had to do to get my next fix. I was held at gunpoint for a few hours one night. You would have thought that would have straightened me up. No. I kept going. And finally, in 2016, I was in and out of psych wards because I had the mindset that if I went into a psych ward, I could get away from the dope, and I could get away from the people I was running with. For 5 to 7 days, I could get out and I could be strong. I was on the phone with them before I hit the front door of the hospital. Hey, come pick me up. Let's party again. Now mind you, prior to that, I was in a bad accident. I was in the hospital for 10 months, and that's when my mom passed away. And my fiance let me come back so I could rehab because I had to learn to walk again. And, she was trying to make it work. Me, I was trying to figure out when I could be able to walk again. When can I drive again? When can I get high again? That's where my addiction was. It was a dark, dark place. So anyway, the last time I went into the hospital, to the psych ward, she didn't let me come back. So I ended up on the streets of St. Louis. In December of 2016, it was cold. Wasn't showering, wasn't sleeping, just wandering around, just begging God to let me die. That's all I wanted. God just end the misery. And I'm so glad today He didn't listen. So I went on a 15-day stretch where I was up. I started hearing voices, thought little Martians were living in my head, thought everybody was out to kill me, and I collapsed. And I woke up 4 days later in the hospital. And when I woke up, they said, "What do you want?" And I said, "I'm done." And I haven't looked back since. I went into treatment on December 26th of 2016. And since I've been in recovery, I've had a lot of no matter what's. I've lost a lot of good friends to addiction. I've been carless. I've been homeless. I've been jobless. I've been stranded in other states because vehicles have broke down, and I have refused to pick up. Because my life is good today, and I am so glad that God did not answer that prayer. In this December, I'll have 4 years, which is amazing because I couldn't put 30 days together. For a while, I couldn't put 30 seconds. You know, the pain pills were my go-to because at every relationship I was in, they didn't know I was an addict. So if I couldn't get to the drugs, the heavy drugs, I could go to the doctor and get some pain pills, so I was good. That was the only way I could function in today. I couldn't imagine doing that.
Well, Scott, I know you told your story here, but how old were you when you first started using?
Well, I was in high school when I started drinking.
Okay.
You know, off and on. You know, Mad Dog 2020 was...
Mad Dog 2020, I remember those. And so how were you introduced to drugs?
A manager where I worked was the one that introduced me to the hard stuff. Now, I was smoking marijuana with my neighbor and drinking beer with my neighbor, but the hard stuff was a manager at work. I was working 100 hours a week. I walked in one day. He said, "Scott, you look bad. Here you go." And I was off to the races.
And what was that drug?
Meth.
Meth.
Yep.
Okay. And now how long were you on drugs?
Well, from 17 to 46.
And who all knew about your drug addiction?
Just the people I got high with. My family didn't know. My friends didn't know. Girlfriends didn't know.
When did your family find out about it?
About 2013. When I was acting, when my behavior changed.
And where did you get your drugs from?
Various people. Sometimes I would, friends that knew friends, or I would go to East St. Louis, Illinois. I'd go to Broadway, you know, just...
And did you know where your dealers got their drugs?
Nope. Didn't care.
Would you say there's a serious drug problem with our youth?
Oh,
today?
absolutely. Absolutely. 100%.
Now, when you started taking drugs, how did it make you feel?
Oh, I felt amazing because I didn't have to feel. I didn't have to feel. I didn't have to deal with the pain. I didn't have to feel with that. I didn't have to deal with the anger.
Now, do you think other people that start using drugs, it's because of something trauma in their life that has happened?
I would say a big percentage. I don't know of too many people that just decided one day that they were going to use drugs just for something to do. I'm not saying that doesn't happen because I can't speak for everybody, but a lot of times people use to numb the pain of something that happened in their childhood, or even young adult, or even I know some adults that started at in their early 20s because something traumatic happened. Because you don't want to deal with it, you don't want to face it, you don't want to cry, you don't want to hurt, you just don't want to feel.
And so you've been almost clean 4 years?
Yeah, on the 19th of this month, it'll be 43 months.
Awesome, congratulations.
Thank
on that.
you.
Now, do you believe a support system is important?
Absolutely. We cannot do it on our own. We can't. I don't know of anybody that has been able to stay clean or stay sober, however you want to put it, without a support system.
And what does a support system look like?
People that, whether it be people in church, whether it be people that are in a 12-step program. For me, my support system started off with people that had a lot more clean time than I did, a lot more sobriety than I did. And now I'm blessed to have a balance of people that have never used drugs that support me, and then I've got a lot of people that are in recovery that support me. People at church support me. And the reason why I say that, for me, I cannot speak for anybody else, but for me, if I try to do it on my own, you isolate, my mind thinks, and it goes to bad places. So I try not to isolate. And I'll give you an example. Cool. Not to interrupt you.
No, that's great. Give me an example.
Not to really isolate, but to tell you how my mind works. Yesterday I was at the gym, and I did a killer workout on my upper body. My life, I do have a lot going on, but my life is good. I got a job. I got people that love me. I got a roof over my head. My thinking went, I looked down, and this is a trigger warning if somebody's listening. I saw a vein pop out of my arm, and my mind went to, wow, wouldn't it be nice to go get a needle? Out of the blue. So what do? I pray, and I reach out. If I didn't have a support system, nobody to talk to, that could have been dangerous to me.
Have you always believed in God?
I did. I do. But I thought God abandoned me. I thought God hated me. I thought he was punishing me. And that's the farthest thing from the truth. But it took, for me, working steps. And it took getting into recovery to grow closer to God and realize that God was carrying me when I wasn't there.
Now, do you feel confident that you're not going to do drugs anymore?
At least for today.
Okay.
I can't tell you tomorrow.
Right.
I'm not going to say I'm never going to do it again. You're never going to hear me say I got this. Because for me, I don't speak for anybody else, but when you say I got this, or when you say never, a lot of times you get cocky. And when you get cocky in recovery, that's a dangerous place. Because then I've seen it time and time again where people will say, they'll get cocky and they'll say, well, alcohol's not my drug of choice, so I can go have a drink. For me, if I left here and had a drink, I'd have a needle in my arm after that. So guess what? I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to get cocky. For me, I have to stay humble. Have to. And I worry about today. Tomorrow when I wake up, I'll say my prayers to God, and I'll worry about tomorrow.
What's the attitude of the community about drug addiction?
It's getting better, thank goodness. And it's sad. Okay. It's getting better, but the reason the attitude's getting better is because there's more deaths and it's affecting more people. And it's sad that it took that for more people to come around. Because for the longest time, a drug addict was judged. Oh, you're a junkie, you're trash, you're this, you're that. Drug addiction affects everybody. Today, everybody knows, whether it's a family member, whether it's a friend, somebody knows somebody that's affected from drugs or alcohol. Somebody knows somebody that has died from an OD. And now is a scary time for people in recovery. So people need to come more together, more so than what they have been. It's a scary time for people in recovery with COVID, meetings being shut down, and Zoom meetings. And so I'm glad that the community is starting to come together. But more needs to be done.
When you say more needs to be done, what do you have in mind?
There needs to be more awareness than what's going on now. But see, with COVID and social distancing, it makes it tough. When things start opening back up, there needs to be more events so people can see that a drug addict is not a bad person. We're just sick. An addict is not bad. We just made some bad decision, bad choice. We're just sick. You get into recovery and you get better. Our minds are still a hot mess, but it's how you deal with it. You know, and it's what I do like is that more people are starting to say that it's a disease, it's a brain disorder. Now, mind you, when I first took the meth, it was a choice. But once I did it, my brain took over. My brain waves just went, I had to have it. I tried to white knuckle it many times. Couldn't do it. Needed it. Needed it. I even went into treatment in 92 for 33 days. Come out, hit 2 meetings. It wasn't for me. Okay, I got this. No. Needed to have it.
So, as you and I both know, there's more than just being an alcoholic or a drug addict. What are some other addictions that we have going on?
Oh, food addiction, sex addiction. You got gambling. There's cutters. I know a lot of people that are cutters, but they don't do drugs. You know, I know people that go to the gym. That's an addiction for them. There's some healthy addictions and there's some unhealthy addictions. To me, the thing is, you got to figure out, you got to find that balance and that boundary. I was talking to somebody the other day that had a food addiction, and they were doing so good, and then they said they relapsed about a year ago and they can't stop. I said, why? And they told me, but I'm not getting into it now because it's that conversation was between me and them. But I would say the biggest ones are the cutting, the food, the sex, the gambling. Those are the top ones.
Okay. Now, if there's a parent that finds out their child is struggling with addiction, what kind of suggestions, recommendations could you give to that parent?
Well, there's support groups out there. I know down in on Sundays, I don't know if they're having it right now because of COVID, excuse me, but Mo Network has a phenomenal meeting on Sundays from 3 to 5, and it's for family members that have lost a loved one from a drug addiction or dealing with it. And I would suggest if a loved one is in drugs, you go to Narnon. Look up narnon.org, and it'll give you listings of meetings in your area. If alcohol is a thing, go to Al-Anon. Because you're going to meet somebody that's going through they've already went through what you're going through now. And that's a good support system. And get phone numbers and talk to them and lean on them. Because parents can't do it themselves either. There's a few parents I'm dealing with now that my heart goes out to them because they're stuck. They don't know what to do. And the unfortunate thing, when we're in our addiction, you can't do anything. Until we're ready, you can't.
Now, what if someone's listening and they're in addiction themselves and they have tried a lot of different groups or tried this or tried that rehabs and nothing's worked? What advice could you give them?
They're going to have to, when they're ready, when they have hit their bottom, treatment will work.
When you say bottom, what does that exactly mean?
Everybody has a different bottom. Mine was living on the streets of St. Louis in 0-degree weather. With nothing. I didn't burn any bridge. I blew them up. I had nothing left. My family, friends, nothing. There's some people, their bottoms is they lose their kids. There's some people that they lose their house, they lose their job, they lose their car. Everybody bottom's different. An addict is not going to stop using until the pain is greater than the pleasure. Plain and simple. When the pain gets greater than the pleasure and they have nothing left in the tank and nobody there, then they make a decision. You either want to get clean or not. And if you're ready, you go into treatment and you'll get it. Now, when I went to treatment, the techs thought I was the one that wouldn't make it, that I would go back out and use. And I am the only one out of 28 that it has not relapsed, that has stayed clean.
Good job. Your shirt says "just for today." What does that mean?
Because that's all we have is today. That's all we have. And that's around in the programs. It's just for today. You want to give it to God. You want to surrender, and just for today, you don't pick up. As long as you don't put dope in one hand or the other, don't put alcohol in one hand or the other, you're going to be okay. I promise, you're going to be okay. Don't put it in your hands. Just for today, don't put anything in your hands. Put one foot in front of the other. Be the best you can. You're going to be fine.
Now let's go back to, you mentioned work the steps. Some people may not know what those steps are. Could you explain that a little bit better?
Well, they got them in, all the 12-step programs, whether you're an alcoholic, a drug addict, heroin, they're all the same. And the steps, that's where you find out, that's where you get closer to, as in, with the steps, at the God of your own understanding, get closer to your higher power, minus God, all God, but you learn that, you figure out who you are, you figure out what your character defects are, and you figure out, with all the resentments that you have against people for so long, that you just hate them because they treated you wrong, you realize they wouldn't have acted the way they did if you wouldn't have been on drugs, or you wouldn't have been on alcohol. Their reactions were based on your action. And then you get to a point where you start working on your defects. Do I have an anger problem? Do I, whether it be, jealousy or anxiety or and you ask God to remove them. Does he do it every day? No, because we're human. We're going to mess up. And then you're able to go back and you're able to make amends with people that you harmed, people that you stole from, people that you were mean to, and the steps is where the freedom is. CR's got steps, which is phenomenal.
What's CR?
Celebrate recovery. I was going through those when COVID hit, and once it starts opening back up, I'm gonna finish them off. So, the steps were amazing for me, but I also had to take a PTSD class when I was in treatment for trauma, being raped and beat, and the abandonment. Hated it and loved it at the same time. And I'm good with who I am today. Even with my family not talking to me, haven't seen my son since '97. It bothers me, but it doesn't control my mood, it doesn't control my actions, and it doesn't control who I am.
All right. Well, this is Scott Hartman. He is the I Get It coach. I thank you for telling us your story and answering questions. We'll be back next Thursday at 4:30. You're going to hear from me, Lisa, about my addiction, and maybe Scott will come up with some good questions for me.
I'll have some questions. Absolutely.
So thank you for joining us, and keep checking us out. We will send information out how you can send us questions for us to answer for you. Again, thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. And if you're struggling, just reach out, please. Find a church, get on, you can get on NA.org, AA.org, HA, Celebrate Recovery. You can find a support group somewhere. And don't ever feel like you're alone, because you're not. There's so many people out there that want to help you. And thanks again.